This is a video about my trip to Transnistria and how a widely unknown, self-declared independent state is a model for how seemingly endless violence and tensions can be transformed peacefully. Transnistria is a landlocked region between Ukraine and Moldova in Eastern Europe. It is not recognised by any UN country, however, it still has its own currency, own border control, own flag, and its own government. There are numerous things which make Transnistria a fascinating place to visit, but perhaps the most interesting of all is that they still remain in an active war zone, although this has been frozen for the last 30 years. So we arrived in Transnistria. First impressions, it's basically a big open-air Soviet museum. It's very, very old and yeah, like nowhere else in Europe. The Transnistrian War lasted from 1990 to 1992 and was fought against Moldova as an act to force independence. How many victims were there?
No, from Pridnestrovia, this is the Russian name for Transnistria. From Pridnestrovian side, they speak about 806. From Moldovan side, they don't give any exact data, because for Moldova, it's a shame. It was a shame. It is still not a thing they should be proud of. The armed neutrality. The armed neutrality. It's very, very unique term, because the neutrality actually should not be with arms. Yeah, not. So he was talking about the armed neutrality, because his final goal was to stop the war between Moldova and Transnistria, and he forced the aggressor, and the aggressor was obviously Moldova, not Transnistria, because not Transnistrians went to Chisinau, but Moldovans came here. He stopped the aggressor in order to establish the conditions for negotiations for the peace.
There was really one main cause for the conflict. The population living there were heavily pro-USSR, and after Moldova broke away in 1991, the region wanted to remain part of it. This was because a large majority of the population spoke Russian and favoured Soviet cultures and traditions. Even today, Soviet buildings, cultures, and the Russian language remain, which makes visiting the region feel like a step back in time to what the USSR used to be like. Russian peacekeepers continue to have base in Transnistria in order to deter any future conflicts by Moldova. I noticed there was quite a lot of military. 2,000.
Just
in Transnistria?
2,000 Russian soldiers. About 500 of them are purely peacekeepers, and 1,500 their mission or their function is to maintain an ammunition depot in the village Kolbasna, which still contains about 20,000 tons of weapons from the Soviet time.
However, you may ask why this conflict still has not been resolved after 2 decades, or why Russia did not accept them into their territory. It all comes down to maintaining spheres of ideological influence. So Russia uses Transnistria as a geopolitical tool, as it does not want Transnistria to be independent, or Moldova could go and join the EU, who won't accept a country if Russian troops are on its soil. This is also why Russia don't want to accept Transnistria to become part of Russia. It therefore can be argued that Russia are using Transnistria as a tool in order to stop the expansion of NATO and the European Union, which conflict with Russian ideologies. Moldova obviously don't want to just let Transnistria go and be independent, because it's part of its cultural identity and history. The territory is therefore pretty much stuck in a conflict, which does not seem like it will be resolved anytime soon. So now we understand the history of Transnistria, including the Transnistrian War. Why has there been no conflict for the past 30 years, and why is it a good example of conflict transformation for other countries? Number 1. There is a platform for communication between all parties so that any tensions can be diffused quickly to prevent any violence. One of the key principles of conflict transformation is that parties negotiate around shared interests, something that requires a good communication platform. So this building behind me, he was saying, is the cultural building where the JPG meet, which is the board of countries that border Transnistria, basically to keep peace, and they've done this successfully so far as there's been no war, which Moldovans say and Transnistrians say is the most important thing. So there are many common interests between Transnistria and Moldova. The obvious ones involve the environment and trade. However, also one of their main ambitions is that there is no violence. This being the common interest is discussed regularly at these meetings, which happen once or twice a month. Number 2. They're very good at remembering the past. All over the capital, Tiraspol, there were many statues and memorabilia which commemorated those who had died in the Transnistrian War. We saw 2 tanks, 2 eternal flames marking those who had died, and also statues of those people who had promoted peace. You can see it on this camera, but on that building there is bullet holes from the war in '92. However, upon visiting the country, I was shocked by the optimism shown by its population, who appeared to have hope for the future. This brings us on to the final pillar about why Transnistria could be so good as a model for conflict transformation. There are many statues promoting peace for the future generations. There is definitely a general optimism in the country that their children can come together with Moldovan children and unite, which is surprising seeing as the Transnistrian government doesn't want to be a part of Moldova. So there has been no violence for nearly 30 years, progress is advancing towards peace and friendships from people on both sides of the border, and most importantly, the people seem happy. Who knows what will happen to Transnistria in the coming decades? However, in my opinion, it is a great example for how wars which look near impossible to resolve can be transformed peacefully. So we're currently basically in a frozen war zone. However, the most important part is really the people are happy, and if you look behind me, these people seem happy. So look out in the news in the coming years, something might change, but the culture of the Soviet Union, Russia here is insane. Nowhere else you can experience this in the world. They still have it firmly in their societies, they still have the buildings, they still have the sickle on the flags. So I definitely recommend you come before anything changes. And yeah, that is our time done in Transnistria. We're going in the water down there now, and I will see you in the next video.